we get on with mission control, and they're like, okay, it's not looking good up ahead. We have snow, we have ice. Eastbound I-40 has already been closed over Flagstaff.
So Joni Mitchell always said, you don't know what you got until it's gone. And in the case of Cannonball, sometimes you don't even realize or take the time to realize what you had before it's already gone. And in April of 2022, Wes and Mark Spence and I set the coast to coast to coast Cannonball record. And we went in a week's time from being three guys with a crazy plan to three guys with a world record to three guys who were in second place. It's really easy to look back on that and say, well, just go out and do it again, right? You were only beat by 9 minutes. And that's generally people who have never done a cannonball before and don't realize everything it takes to go in and prep and build a car and be ready for it. But a good thing that we had was Grady and Bennett and Christopher were really good friends of ours. We had a group chat and everything. We always talked about, is there time out there even? Is it worth going out there? Because you always have to weigh the risk versus the reward of going out for a cannonball run, especially a record-setting run. And we said, there's probably a couple hours out there, but it isn't a one-way run where we've seen a lot of times recently. People are getting down in the low 30s. We had obviously a couple of high 20s recently, but that's a one-way run, and it's easy to say, well, if I leave at this time and I end at this time, I can just thread the needle and I can hit traffic perfectly and I can hit weather perfectly and all that. But to turn around and go back and do it again all at one shot, all that math goes out the window. So really taking a shot at a coast to coast to coast record run, doing it again, trying to trim off all that time, it's not as easy as it sounds. So it took about 2 years for us to really get kind of everything back together, get the car set up and whatnot, and we were finally ready to go and try to set the record again. And everyone who's done a cannonball will tell you the two most constant things in cannonball are you're going to have fuel issues and you're going to have co-driver issues. And it wasn't really an issue at first. Wes was back in. We knew that right away. Spence was kind of on the fence. He had some stuff going on, so we understood. It was about a month, 2 months before the run, and he said, I'm out. I can't do it. And we said, we respect that, Mark. And we had a backup. We knew we needed a contingency, so called Greg. I said, Greg, you're definitely in. Spence is out. Greg's all on board. And about 2 weeks before the run, Greg calls me and he goes, hey, I really feel terrible. I have this family thing going on. And he and I talked about it. It was a true family emergency. And it's one of these, we've said, time out, Greg. This is family stuff. You got to get your priorities in order. Don't feel bad about wrecking our run. You got to go take care of this stuff. So took care of that. And we said, all right, so we still need a third co-driver. And you can't just pick anybody for this. It's not just call anyone who's ever wanted to do a cannonball. If you want to go out and back and try to set a record, it's a really difficult thing to do. So I start going through the list. Wes and I are talking quite a bit, trying to figure out who do we invite along, who do we ask to come. And we had it narrowed down to about 3 or 4 people. Start making phone calls. I called Bronson. He was my co-driver on the US Express. Phenomenal driver, even better guy. Would have loved to do it with him. He couldn't do it. He was busy with work. So I said, okay, got 2, 3 more people here. Called Dave Maher, Alex Roy's co-driver from 3104. Dave said he'd be interested, but he had something on the following Monday from when we wanted to go, so he couldn't make it. So okay, I'm gonna try Chris Michaels. I know he's had this crazy busy month. He probably can't do it, but I've got to try this guy. Fast guy, great person. Would love to have him on the team. So I call Chris and I'd say, hey, this is what we're doing. I'd love to have you on board. I literally just got done talking to Dave Maher. So this is how high up on the list you are. This is how important you are. Can you do it?
There are myriad fun things about being in the cannonball community, but one of my personal favorites is when you get those phone calls, kind of like in the movie, you get that kind of cryptic phone call, we're putting a team together. So I'm in the middle of something and I get this message from Nick and it just says, you want to take a road trip? And we all know what that means. And it's just these fun moments. We all, we're all friends. We all know each other's driving abilities, things like that. You're very proud anytime somebody calls you up. But yeah, there's just this great kind of cinematic quality to it when you just get this little phone call of you gonna take a road trip? Yeah, what do you got? Coast to coast to coast. Are you in? Yeah, what do we got? Well, I got a Saab 95. It's got all these countermeasures, blah, this, and this. You know, we got front and rear laser. We got, you know, this, got radio, we got all this kind of stuff. All right, cool. That sounds awesome. Where do we meet? You know, it sounds on the phone. It sounds like you're planning some sort of drug deal or something, but it's really just speeding. But it's just a wonderful moment, and you know, I was friends with these guys already, so I was 100% in as soon as I got the call.
To talk about like the preparation and stuff for these runs, like Nick was saying, we have to go through all this logistics with spotters, co-drivers, all these people that are going to help us go across country. So a part of this planning, we have this massive spreadsheet. It probably totals in like 3 feet long, and it has everything broken down from what time from the East Coast, what time on the West Coast, each fuel stop, all that stuff, saying that this is our points for this time. It's basically like a video game. You have all these checkpoints. So at each point in time along the trip, there was a certain area we need to be in, and we had to maintain that. So you can imagine all the work that took. And I say Nick's a wizard when it comes to spreadsheets, and he's like Gandalf, but just with Excel. So he does his magic. We get all these forms put together. You know, now we're at the big day. We get to the start, and we have friends there, we have spotters there, we have all sorts of people there just ready to watch us set sail across the country. So we take off at a quick but controlled pace through the city, not like the last world record where that went a lot faster, but we knew it considering the time and, you know, location we're at. So we get out, we hit to the, go to the first toll booth, and that's when I smashed the gas in the Saab. The wheels broke free, I smoked the tires, and you know, in the words of the rabbit, it's like, Lord help me, I have a race car. This Saab had major upgrades from the last time, from 2022, and I definitely could feel the difference. And you know, I was all excited because it was a total new beast that we had on our hands.
You always hear about the team in the car, but what it really is when you're trying to cannonball, and especially when you're going for a record like this, is you have all these people who are there to help you. And that's one of the best parts about being in the cannonball community and being in that fraternity of lunatics is when you make those phone calls, everyone just answers and they go, yeah, how can I help? What can I do? So normally for a cannonball run, a one-way run, there's like a mission control team. That's usually like a person, maybe 2 people. And to stay up for 30 hours or roundabout there, not the end of the world. When you want to go out and back, and now all of a sudden it's a 60-hour adventure, 60-plus hour adventure, that becomes something where you need like a 3-man team. Started asking around, and we built the perfect mission control team. We had Dan Doucette, Sean Mason, Mason Dibley. They were running point. They had set up their own spreadsheets, which were amazing. They had set up like a shift schedule to man like who was going to be the main person at which times. And whenever they were available, they were on anyway. And then as you're reaching out to these other people and you're saying, hey, can you help out? Can you spot? Can you do this? Can you do that? All of a sudden we have this adjunct mission control team who they're only supposed to be, or I should say they're only required to help out with like a certain thing, but they just want to be part of it and they want to help you achieve your goal and your dream. And so all of a sudden we had probably a half a dozen extra people who were on our walkie-talkie app the whole time, helping out with route planning, helping out with weather, helping out with traffic. And it was amazing the amount of help we had.
So as somebody who really enjoys speeding, I can't really convey the confidence that you get when you have a mission control team like the ones that these guys had put together, and just the car itself. You know, you're driving with laser jammers, you've got police radio, you have every bit of Waze and JVB1 and highway radar and flight tracker and all this electronics. You've got wealth of guys behind you that do the same thing. They know what to look for. You've got people on the radio that are letting you know about the police. You got people that are watching weather, watching traffic. It's everything you ever wanted to get away with the thing you wanted to do. And it's just such an empowering feeling when you take the wheel. We had this one really, really fantastic moment where I was behind the wheel, Nick's spotting, Wes is trying to get some sleep, and we're flying through Ohio, and Wes hears us get called in on the police radio. And immediately, Mission Control can confirm it. You know, we're like, okay, this is happening, here's where we are, is there an exit to get off? No. Wes had a friend who was a trucker who was actually spotting for us. And, you know, somebody who grew up with Smokey and the Bandit and all that, like having, you know, an actual trucker, like looking for the cops for you was just so much fun. So like we're listening to the police radio. We got Slack Cat on the CB. He's like scouting ahead. Like we're looking for where they're waiting for us. Like there's just these really, really great moments where you realize your life is like a movie, and it's just so much fun. And it's so empowering to have so many friends behind you, new friends, old friends, just all these people who as Nick said, that like everybody is for the mission.
After one of the fuel stops, I'm back behind the wheel, cruising, driving like every other leg. Everything's going well. But then at one point, I'm just about to overtake a vehicle and I slide over, change lanes. I downshift and throttle up. And as soon as I throttle up, it felt like a hand grabbed us and shook the entire car. And I'm sitting here like thinking, oh no, it's the transmission. What other problems that we have? We continue to travel down the road and we're talking back and forth like, okay, what are we going to do? We have this problem. We need to resolve it. So we hit up Mission Control. Mission Control tells us that there is a gas station coming up. There is just one gas station because we're in the middle of nowhere, New Mexico. We get to this fuel station. As we pull in, the car just shuts off completely, like just dies. And this is the first time the car has been off the entire trip from the start of New York all the way to New Mexico. Did pretty well, but it was very disappointing that as soon as you pulled in, it just turned off. And this had to be the windiest place as well. As soon as we opened the car doors, we had plastic bags get ripped out of the car. I look over at Chris. I said, hey, you better hold on that cowboy hat or that thing is gone. So as we're sitting here looking for vacuum leaks, anything obvious, we couldn't locate any of the problems. Nick has a moment of realization that it could be bad gas from the one fuel stop because it was probably about an hour of driving into this leg that this problem occurred. We go inside this gas station. It's a really small gas station. Find some kind of fuel treatment to stable out the gas. So on top of that, not only do we have a factory fuel tank full of this bad gas, well, in Cannonball, you have an auxiliary tank. This auxiliary tank also is contaminated with this bad gas. So going through this process, we threw 2 of the jugs in the trunk, 1 in the main tank, went over to the fuel pump and topped off with fresh fuel, hoping that would resolve our problem. We take off, everything seemed to be okay, and a few miles down the road, the same thing happened. It sputtered, shuddering, all that stuff like that. Now I'm thinking I'm having a deja vu moment because back in 2022, a similar thing happened because Mark and I were zoned out somewhere in Colorado the last time, and we left the auxiliary fuel pumps on, overfilled the main tanks, and caused the same sort of issues. We have like this whole driver meeting while we're trying to resolve this issue in the car, saying like, hey, this is what we could do, and maybe we could stop at the next gas station, go to Walmart, there's a parts store down the road, we can try to maybe fuel pump something. But I said, listen, the last time I had to muscle through it and just work my way through. So they all agreed that, yeah, go for it, see what we can get out of it. So as I'm getting to like 25% throttle, it's sputtering, and I'm just working my way through it, working my way, trying to summon every bit of pedal voodoo I can out of the Saab. And it eventually clears out. It just, all of a sudden the RPMs changed, it's smooth, and I'm like, listen, boys, we're back in business.
It finally clears up. We're finally making some pace, and it's starting to rain. And, when you're doing a cannonball, things like rain and snow and all that can completely derail your effort. So we're looking ahead. I will say there were some gorgeous clouds. Some of these, cloud formations and weather formations we're driving into were just stunning to look at, especially out in the desert. But it did not bode well for what was up the road. Nick's driving shift is about to wrap up, so it's my turn behind the wheel. Thankfully, he cleared the bad gas out. We get on with Mission Control, and they're like, okay, it's not looking good up ahead. We have snow, we have ice. Eastbound I-40 has already been closed over Flagstaff. We're coming up on this sort of make or break point. And, of course, then everybody on the team, it's all hands on deck. Everybody's trying to find new routes, whatever. Is there any way around this? No, not really. Out west, there's just not a lot of little surface roads like we have back east. You're either on the interstate or you're 100 miles out of the way. The gamble was, okay, we can go ahead 2.5 hours and hope that westbound I-40 has not been closed like eastbound, or we go ahead and pull it now and veer off and take 2-lane back roads down mountains down to Phoenix, which is not on the way to Redondo Beach, and go around that way. It's like, risk it all and hope you make it, but if you get turned around, you're done. You're going to lose so much time, 5 hours of backtracking there and back. So you're toast. So it's like, risk it on an hour and a half extra time going down the mountain to Phoenix, or gamble it all to go over the mountain. So the decision was made, better to have all to something than all to nothing. So we veer off, we get off in this little town, and now it's dark, it's raining, it's snowing a little bit. Wasn't what we wanted at the time, but it turned out to be a pretty magical cannonball moment in that, when you read, Brock's books back in the day, when they're running on 2-lane roads and it wasn't just these big smooth highways and all that, we all kind of got into that situation. You know, we're on these little 2-lane blacktop roads, cutting through the desert, down these mountain passes. It's curvy. We can't see anything off the road. We're actually using like the GPS to kind of figure out what the next curve is. There's nobody out there. There's no cell phone coverage. There's no gas. Joe Petralia is from Arizona. He knows that area really well. He's like, okay, look, you're going to be out in space. Like, if you run out of gas, there's nobody to help you. You break down, there's no cell phone coverage. Like, you guys are going to go on the dark side of the moon for about 2 hours, and you're going to come out the other side in Phoenix, and we're going to make it. So that was the plan. Wes is trying to get some sleep in the back. I'm driving, Nick's spotting, and we just embark on this 2-lane cannonball down through the most remote parts of southwestern United States. Just had a ball. It was curvy. It was tight. We're looking for wildlife on the thermal. We're, you know, literally just using the GPS to figure out what this curve's going to do. Came up, we just outside of Phoenix, caught up with some girl and some, like a Hellcat or something that wanted to race us for a little while, and that went away pretty quickly. But anyhow, we made it. And we meet Joe at this gas station in Phoenix. We gas up. Nick takes the wheel and then proceeds to just make up so much of the time we lost. I don't know. It was like a 175-mile detour, I think. I don't know how much time we lost overall, but Nick proceeds to make it up, and we are back on I-10 now, heading into LA, going to, it was I-10? I can't remember what the highway was now. I was so tired at this point. I get in the back. I try to sleep. He takes the wheel. Next thing I know, I wake up. We're pulling into the Portofino.
So like Chris was saying, it was really cool because it was almost kind of like your Cannonball and like Brock, right? We're taking I-10 in, we're passing the dinosaur in Palm Springs where the ambulance broke down. So you're doing it just like Brock did. We pull into Portofino. When I ran my first Cannonball run in 2021, I did 32:07. And that was a really cool time because it tied Diem and Turner. And when I learned about Cannonball, that was the time to beat. So I was really excited about that. When we did Coast to Coast to Coast, the first time out in April of 2022, we got into Portofino in 32:01. Super close to being sub 32. I knew the car had sub 32 in it. I wanted to beat 32 hours. So when we pulled in 31:39, after everything that we'd been through with the gas, after the amazing driving that Christopher had done through Arizona in the middle of nothing, to really pull in that kind of a time was just, it was a phenomenal feeling. We had a good guy, Sean Keeley, who was on our team, and he lives out by Portofino, and he met us at the turnaround. It's the middle of the night, and he's sitting there. I had shipped a spare tire again, just like last time. So get out of the car as we whip it around. Sean's there. Give him a great big hug, big sweaty hug. And we look over the car. We're like, okay, doesn't need the extra tire. You know, or is the suspension good? We sent off a few jumps, so I want to make sure that it was still mostly intact. No major roadkill in the vehicle or anything like that. 3 minutes, we had done the turn, and we were back on the road, which last time was 11 minutes. And obviously that proved to be a huge disadvantage later on. So we really worked to tighten that up this time.
As we travel through all these states and stuff, we have thermal cameras on the car. And as I'm driving, I start noticing all these like balls of fur all over the road. And I'm like, man, this is not good because I don't want to get surprised by any animals whatsoever. You know, the thermal camera's on, you'll see like, you know, a heat signature off in the woods and all these little blips of danger that are off to the side. So at one point, I'm going to change lanes, shift over, and as I'm shifting over, there is a massive deer carcass right on the white line. Now, in my head, I'm doing a damage assessment at 100 miles an hour plus and thinking, there goes the bumper, light bar, any magical part, we're going to lose it. I had no choice but just to center that deer and roll over it. As you're going over it, I'm just cringing, like thinking, just don't rip anything out from underneath it. Nick did make me aware that there's a skid plate underneath the vehicle, which made me feel a little bit better. But again, this deer, I don't know how it fit under the vehicle. It was so big on the line. And then at one of the fuel stops, Nick does his normal assessment, looks around the vehicle. We take off again. I get in the back seat. And then Nick's telling me that he thought the exhaust wrap was falling off, but come to find out it was actually deer hide that was all hung up in the rear suspension and all those parts back there. And then also, as we were traveling back through on our way, we knew that there was another team chasing their own personal record in Audi. So, long story short, we get Matthew Evans in our tracking device here so he can monitor where we're at. And he's sort of new to the Cannonball world and like the spotting. And he basically said, yeah, I'm going home and I can spot you, no big deal. As we're driving, he's talking to us and he's like, are you guys going for a world record? And we're like, yes. Then next question comes out, are you on pace? And we're like, yes. Then as I tell him, it's Nick and Wes up here in the vehicle. He then slowly starts putting it together. I get a text back, all caps, Nick. And I could feel that excitement coming through because now he's finally realized that the Cannonball Saab is now back in action. We're going back for that world record. And he now flips his switch to full Cannonball mode. He is now traveling over 120 miles an hour because he's trying to clear as much road as humanly possible for us. And that was an awesome feeling.
I feel like I certainly drew the good straw on this run in that, I got to drive in the mountains so much, which I love the curves, just sailing along. The bit of I-40 that had been closed on the way out was now open. So we got a clear run on the way back, and I'm just hitting the mountains above Flagstaff, and there's snow on the side of the road, but the road is clear. Mission Control confirmed that the road temperature was, I don't know how they do this or how they know this, but they just know things that you can come up with the most random question as you're driving, and somebody will give you an answer in 10 seconds. So they somehow know the road temperature is 35 degrees. So the car's sticking fine, and it was just this amazing, glorious run through the mountains, all these beautiful curves.
So we talk about all this like police interactions and stuff like that, and I was the one that happened to get into a little bit of a situation with some officers. As I was motoring along, we come up on this one straight away, and I was pretty much at the point of, well, I see a cop, and let me just risk it and see if I can get around him. So I attempt to overtake him in the fast lane just because, I don't know, I was having one of those moments of like, I don't care, let's just see where this goes. I roll up onto him. As I'm passing him on the left, I see that it's a sheriff's vehicle, and just as I crest around the front of his vehicle, he jumps in behind us, throws his lights on, and I'm like, oh, great. So I slow down, but he overtakes us. So I'm like, okay, weird, but I'll allow that. Like, I definitely can enjoy this because I'm not on the side of the road now talking to him. And I get behind him. Well, little did we know, this escort would last 150 miles of doing a max of 70 miles an hour. So think about all this, you hear how fast we're going and all this excitement that we have. We also run into these very long and boring trips when something like that happens, because now he's already pretty much told me that he's going to pull me over if I attempt to do it again. So we just had to sit back, relax, and just talk car stories the entire 150 miles.
Getting into the car for the last shift, it was not my plan, but it was just the way that the schedule worked out, that I was going to have the last shift driving into Portofino, and I had the last shift driving into New York too. There's a lot of pressure on you. Obviously, you want to have a good time, you want to be fast, but we knew that we were on pace at this point to break the record. And we knew we had some cushion built in. But I'm looking at the timer, and I'm talking to Wes, I'm talking to Christopher, and I'm the kind of guy who's always like, well, if we already are going to achieve this goal, why not have a better goal? We can probably beat something faster. So we started talking about, can we get it under 64? Can we get it under 63? And I'm pushing the car. And when you have a Cannonball team, everyone kind of has different jobs. We all want to go fast, obviously, but you have the guy who's really into like strategy and building out the plan and, stick to the plan. You plan the drive and drive the plan, kind of a deal. And then you have the guy who's really into countermeasures and the tech and all that kind of stuff. And you have the guy who's just, I drive car, I go fast, right? The fast guy in the car. We all had done a little bit of everything, but I would say the fastest guy on our run was absolutely Christopher. And I don't know, he says it was the luck of the draw on shifts. I think he's just the fastest driver in the car. But it was kind of funny because we're heading into New York, and Wes and I are bouncing off each other. We're like, we're going to go fast. We're going to get it down to 63. We're going to get down to 62. And Chris is the one saying, we are one pothole away from losing this whole thing. Like, we have had plenty of inverted speed bumps, as Wes put it. We've hit plenty of deer. This car has been airborne several times now on this run. Let's just try to be safe and get it in. But at the same time, I'm going, I think we can do better. So as we're going in, we've got spotters picking us up along the way in New Jersey, and we get into the tunnel. Somehow or another, we passed our spotters getting into the tunnel. We still don't know how that happened. But we pull into New York City, and it, just like Grady and his team's run, our spotter team at this point had dispersed across Manhattan, and they're in different cars, and they're all coming across in the walkie-talkies. They're like, 38th is backed up. 30th is backed up. 34th looks good. Take 34th. And so as we come out the tunnel, we say, okay, we're going to take 34th. We're coming through. All of a sudden you hear on the walkie-talkie app, blockers, get to your places. And they start blocking traffic for us in Manhattan, which is amazing. And we're whipping down 34th Street. take a right onto, I think it was Madison. We go down to 30th, and as we're turning onto 30th, all of a sudden, because you have to go around the block, right? Manhattan, it's a bunch of one-ways, so you can't just go on 31st. You have to go 30th and around the block. As we're getting on to 30th, pulling in behind us, I hear sirens. And I look in my mirror because oh my gosh, we're like a block from the finish. And here it is. I look in the mirror, and it's Dave Collins, the same spotter who came up on us in his Police Interceptor Explorer in 2022, is coming up behind us here in Manhattan in his C2C Express car. And he's got 7 different types of sirens going, trying to get cars moving. There's a red light in front of us, and I've got the strobes going on the Saab. The Saab's got strobe lights on it to get people out of the way, and he's got the siren going. And finally, the light turns green, and cars are getting out of the way, and we come whipping around on 3rd Avenue, and we come whipping down around onto 31st Street, right up in front of Red Ball. Total time in 61 hours and 59 minutes. So we had beaten Grady and Christopher and Bennett's time by like 3 hours and 20 minutes at that point. Way more time than we had ever imagined was possible on this run. Just to put that in perspective, we averaged sub 31 both ways on this run, which was unreal. So 30 hours, 17 minutes coming back, 31:39 going out with the reroute and the police escorts and all that kind of stuff. It was just crazy to think that we could have done something like this. We pull in, we've got a bunch of our spotters are there. Rob Spector, who had been one of our adjunct mission control guys, who this guy, he's better at spreadsheets. He's forgotten more about spreadsheets than I'll ever know. He had planned everything out. He was tracking us. Every exit we went through, he knew what we were on pace for. He had helped spotting in New York City, and somehow he was blocking a street like 4 blocks away, and I don't think we were parked in front of Red Ball 30 seconds. He made better time at Red Ball than we did. And I spin around, and he's there giving me a great big hug. We had a couple other friends there waiting for us. Wes's girlfriend is there. Rob Pryor's there with a bottle of champagne. So we had champagne. Half of it got on us, half of it got on the car. I think we drank a little, but it was just a phenomenal feeling. And obviously the first calls I make are to Grady and Bennett and just talking to them. And obviously they're very congratulatory, and it's good to have friends like that in the community. And then Christopher, I think, had the best phone call at Red Ball. I turn around, I just got off the phone with Bennett, I think it was, and Chris calls me over, and I can see he and Wes are talking on a phone. He's got the phone out in front of him, and I look down at the phone and just scrolling across, it says Pam Yates. I did this, and now I get to talk to Pam. Like, I don't even know what I'm going to say. And I've met Pam several times, and Lady Pamela doesn't do it justice. She is a wonderful, wonderful person, and I am just so humbled that she thinks what she does of us as a community and everything, and she's so respectful of us. And I think it's because we try to be respectful of everything Brock put together and the legacy of Cannonball and everything. But she was so amazing on the phone, congratulatory, telling us how proud she was, how proud she thought Brock would have been. So that was just, it was super, super meaningful to have that phone call with her at the end of the run.
Our sponsor for this month of VINwiki Car Stories is Bridgestone, and I just had a set of their brand new Jeweler AT Ascent tires installed on my Porsche Cayenne Turbo. Now with this off-road Cayenne project, I've experimented with I guess 8 different wheel and tire combinations, and I really think this is the perfect solution. I still get all of the all-terrain benefits, the off-road performance that I want, and the indestructibility that I love, but I also get a 40,000 mile warranty and all the road composure that I lost with some of the other tire options. So I get the best of both worlds, off-road, on-road, as well as all the latest technology from Bridgestone. Of course, we love their Potenza range of tires for sports cars and supercars, but now their Jeweler AT Ascent is the perfect solution for your on and off-road needs. So click the link in the description below now to learn more about Bridgestone and see what they've got for your car.